Jonathan. All right, bear with me. Bear with John. I mean, we can certainly start it, but I want him to be on frame when we claim he's here.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, here we go. All right, Madeline, if we can go to live, are we live?
Yes, you are good to go.
Okay, fantastic. All right, let's call to order the meeting for the Board of Port Wardens on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, and it's called at 7:01. Roll call, we have all Port Wardens tonight, first time in a while, which is fantastic. Harold Siegel, myself, Jared Lerner, Jonathan McCopp, and Scott Anderson. So all 5 of us are here from the city. We've got Brian Adams, we've got Carrie, and of course Kim taking notes. Madeline's helping on the tech side. So we certainly have a quorum, and all the staff are in attendance as well. We're going to go ahead to approval of the agenda. I mentioned this prior. We did have someone request they withdraw, but because of when they withdrew it, we need to vote on the agenda that was published and go through that motion. Then we'll present a motion to accept the withdrawal of that particular order. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Well, again, the one that was originally submitted. I'll entertain a motion to approve what was initially published agenda.
Hold on, just
Terry.
1 second for purposes of clarification. You don't want to approve the agenda if you're trying to remove something from the agenda.
Okay, I thought you said
we remove it and then approve the agenda as amended.
Okay, fantastic. That's good with me. As you guys know, we have a withdrawal request for old business under old business port 2024-00013, Mr. Fry, 129 Bayshore Avenue. I guess, can I get a motion to?
I'd like to make a motion to remove that from
all right, fantastic. There's a motion for Mr. Anderson, second by Port Warden Siegel. If we all those in favor of the motion to withdraw that particular port, again, let me just read it for the sake of accuracy, and it's going to be port 2024-0013 Don Fry of 129 Bayshore Avenue. We're going to remove that or withdraw that from old business for tonight. We have the motion, we have the second. Can we I guess any opposed? Let me actually, I'm sorry. All those in favor of the motion to withdraw that particular port number, please state aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. That is unanimous. All 5 voted to, so we don't have to worry about who doesn't do it. So now let's move back to accepting the agenda with that item removed. Can I get a motion to do that?
I'll make a motion to save the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Port Warden Anderson. Do I get a second? All right, Mr. Siegel, thank you very much. All those in favor of accepting the motion for the agenda, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, let's go ahead to administrative. Next item on the agenda is to the approval of the minutes from September 24th, 2024. Meeting. Motion. Can I get a motion to accept?
I'll make a
motion. Mr. Siegel, can I get a second?
Second that motion.
All right, Mr. Kopp, thank you very much. All those in favor to accept the motion to approve the minutes, please state aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye. All right, fantastic. All right, next item on the agenda are the findings of fact. Carrie, you might correct me when we get to it as well, but I think I got what you had said. All right, but let's start here.
Before you get into that though, Scott, you weren't at the last meeting, right? On
we've already discussed it. He's gonna
recuse myself.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. All right. So finding is facts for port 2024. Let me make sure I'm going in order. Bear with me. Oh yes, findings of fact for port 2024. Brian, Boy 517 Horn Point Drive. It's constructed to 30 by 4 foot wide stone groin, 59 length and 16 feet in width. Low profile containment sill on the shoreline. Is there a motion to approve the findings of fact?
Motion to approve.
All right, Mr. Lerner, can I get a second? Mr. McCobb, thank you very much. All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the written findings of fact for report 2024-00012, Brian Boy of 517 Horn Point, please state aye or yes.
Yes.
Aye. All right, yes. All right, fantastic. That's universal. And Mr. Anderson was not there, so he stayed, yes, did not vote. All right, so that motion passes. Let's go ahead to the next one, which is findings of fact for port 2024-00016, Rothenhouse of 198 Acton Road. And they want to remove one mooring pile and store an 8x6 floating pier for kayaks. Is there a motion to approve the written findings of fact? Okay, Mr. Siegel, thank you very much. Can I get a second? All right,
Second.
Mr. Lerner, thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion to approve the written findings of fact for report 2024-00016, Mrs. Heidi Rothenhouse of 198 Lacton Place, please, all those in favor, please state aye or yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right, and Mr. Anderson abstained from that vote. Thank you very much. All right, so the next one, I'm going to recuse myself from voting on it, but I'm going to merely call it. And Mr. Anderson is also going to refrain from calling because he wasn't here as well. So the three will be the ones that can make a motion and or vote on it. All right, and that's for the port 2024 City of Annapolis Tucker Street and construct 48x6 floating pier and an 18x6 L-shaped head, as well as a 15.5 ADA compliant kayak rack. Is there a motion to approve the written findings of fact? All right, Mr. Siegel, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. McCobb, all those in favor of the motion to approve the written findings of fact, please state aye or yes.
Aye.
Okay, all three that were allowed to vote did in fact vote on that, so it's effectively unanimous for that respect. So the motion passes. All right. Let's go ahead. I can make my old business red because we can skip over to the new business at this point. So let's go ahead. New business. So the next item on the agenda is port 2024-00017, Mr. Bradley Parker, 2 Severn Avenue, and it's to construct a 62-foot linear foot, a stone reinforcement over top an existing bulkhead and replace 56 linear feet of bulkhead, 18 feet, I assume. It says 18 inches, sorry, channel wood. So Madeline or anyone, can we bring them into any parties that are related to the matter? Can we bring them in? And anybody who is going to be brought in, we'd like to share your video. If you're an expert witness, we want to see you and obviously have you vote. There may be a time frame where we remove any people who have who are public comment. We normally don't show the image, but we would make sure we swore you in. Okay, so anyone planning to testify, please raise your right hand. All right, and again, this relates to the port 2024-00017. All right, you do solemnly swear and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give to the port wardens is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, as a preliminary matter, the board will accept into record the application packet, the staff report, and any public comments. Would the city staff member, Mr. Adams, like to present any additional information about the written staff report?
No, I just say that we did not receive any public testimony, and they did meet the notice requirements of the sign posting and the mailing to adjacent neighbors.
All right, thank you very much. All right, applicant consultant, can you briefly sort of describe your qualifications and that are relevant to this application, and then proceed with sort of presenting what the application's about?
Yes, I'll be presenting tonight. Good evening, Port Wardens. My name is Chris Snyder with Waterfront Engineering, Design, and Construction. We are an engineering firm located in Pasadena, Maryland. We do a tremendous amount of work in the city of Annapolis with marina construction, shoreline erosion control, bulkhead replacement, living shorelines, pretty much anything on the water. Tonight, do you need me to, Mr. Sper, do you need me to say anything more? Do you want me to get started?
No, that's I know your yes,
Yeah.
you're
Wonderful.
We're aware of
wonderful.
that. If you can go ahead and present, that'd be good.
Yeah. Tonight we are the agents representing Bradley and Kitty Walker, located at 2 Severn Avenue on the Severn River in Eastport, just west of the Eastport Yacht Club. I will, if I am allowed, what I will do is I will share my screen with, it may help the Port Wardens to see what the existing scenario is going on with this project site. I do want to note that we have already received authorization from the Maryland Department of the Environment for this project. Bear with me for a moment, please. All right. All right. Can you all see this picture?
Yes.
Okay. Currently on this project site, there is a timber bulkhead with an offset retaining wall just above it. What is currently happening is the timber bulkhead itself is degrading, thus allowing sediment to essentially move down the retaining wall and out into the channel. You can see from this picture, this is out. You'll see a couple more pictures, but there's a large sinkhole essentially that's becoming established behind the upper retaining wall as a result of the bulkhead failing. Let me see if I can. Here we go. This is a good image of the portion of the shoreline, or the portion of the project that is perpendicular to the property. The bulkhead itself is well over 50 years old and just deteriorating. Here's another good image. Here's a good image of one of the sinkholes. It's currently a dangerous and hazardous situation for the applicant. They've resulted in essentially putting safety fencing to make sure that nobody falls in these holes. There's another sinkhole. Also, I do want to note, so this is the adjacent property also owned by the Walkers that currently have stone reinforcement along their portion of the property. What we are proposing is to extend this stone reinforcement all the way to the corner of the bulkhead, and then where the bulkhead itself 90 degrees towards the channel to replace that bulkhead 18 inches channelward of the existing bulkhead. And I have, unless you have any questions.
I actually, I do not. The only thing I found interesting was the lateral lines, how they shoot out from the adjacent property and then tighten up. Now, again, both the properties are owned by it appears, by the Walkers.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really have to do. That was more my own curiosity. Yeah. I find it, I would think the lateral line would be shooting outward, but that's a whole other issue. This is well-established sort of property, so let me shut up. I really don't have any additional questions for this. Port Wardens? There is no public testimony. Let me confirm. Brian had said that, so I've sort of skipped over that. Am I correct in saying that, Brian? There is no public testimony.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So there would be no rebuttal. All right. So again, I really don't have any questions. This looks about sort of clean and normal to me as far as Title 15 is concerned. Port Wardens, do you guys have any questions?
No questions.
I don't have any.
Okay. I realize, I mean, I looked at this, and the only thing when I said just the way in which the lateral lines from the neighbors shot out, but that doesn't have anything to do with this particular portion of it and or the repair, replacement, or improvement. So to me, it's good as far as Title 15 is concerned. There's nothing that relates to the typical things we have to deal with, as far as the construction material looks all good as far as the list in the latter pages. There's nothing that appears to be it's actually helping with erosion. So, I mean, everything within Title 15 that we're responsible for seems to be, well within what you're trying to achieve. So at this point, I declare the public hearing on Port 2024-00017, Bradley Walker, 2 Severn Avenue, closed. Guys, we can discuss the code. I sort of did that sort of prematurely, but again, it's helping with erosion to address this issue. It's not out by the harbor line. There's nothing actually sort of extending, beyond the amount, beyond their lateral lines. They certainly own the lateral lines adjacent. They're simply attaching it to what's already looks like been done well. So there's nothing, that I'm seeing in any of this that is an issue. Do you guys, other Port Wardens, see anything at all title wise?
Is there any anticipation of actually putting a dock out there?
The
I can
applicants have
answer
not
that.
expressed, they have not
I can answer
expressed
that.
that they have any interest.
No.
No.
Okay.
Maybe someday. They
Just
don't
as
want to give up that right.
just as a heads up, you guys closed the public hearing, so
Yeah.
can't take any more.
Right.
Sorry.
If you want to,
Yeah.
if you want to ask questions during
Right.
deliberations, you'd have to reopen the public hearing, which it doesn't take much to do, but just wanted to
Okay.
remind you.
I think we need to make a motion.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. I will entertain the motion to approve or deny the application in Port 2024-00017. Mr. Bradley Walker, 2 Severn Avenue. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, thank you very much. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, I believe that was Mr. McCobb who got the second. Sorry, Jerry. All right. All those in favor of a motion to approve the motion in the application Port 2024-00017, Mr. Walker, 2 Severn Avenue, please state aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, that was all 5 of us. Thank you. So the motion is accepted. All right. The next item on the agenda is Port 2024-00019, City of Annapolis, 6th Street Park, and it's to construct a 6x6 ramp and a 5x19 ramp, construct a 5x7 platform, and 2 5x6 platform, construct an 8x20 foot, 25 foot floating pier with 10x10 floating pier on chocks, and construct a 5x16 aluminum gangway. Madeline, can we bring everyone in that is related to this particular matter? Okay. All right. Anyone, I can see everyone, which is great. Anyone planning to testify, please raise your right hand.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, 1 second.
Yes.
Chris, I'm sending a prompt to your screen. You need to accept it so that you can turn your audio and video on. Okay, he should be on in a second.
Okay.
No, there we go.
Thank you very much, Madeline. And do we have anyone else in the group? All right. Looks like we have everyone. All right. Anyone planning to testify, please raise your right hand. Okay. Lexi, are you gonna, and Mr. Hyatt, are you gonna?
I'm not going to testify. I'm representing opposition here.
Okay. All right. You do solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of or perjury that testimony you are about to give the Port Wardens is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right. Thank you guys very much. As a preliminary matter, the board will accept into record the application packet, the staff report, and any public comments. Would the city's staff to the board, Mr. Adams, like to present any additional information about the written staff report?
No, Chair, I will just mention that we did receive one public comment that I forwarded to the board, and that was from a neighbor at 603 Creekview Avenue, with just some concerns about the dimensions and the lateral line, which I think will be addressed in the presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And any other public comments at all? It was just that one particular. Yeah. Okay. All right. If we can have the applicant's consultant, who is the one who's going to be testifying? Mr. Snyder, Mr. Johnson, who's testifying?
I am.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. If we can briefly get, and we know your qualifications, but if just for everyone else, we can get a brief description of the qualifications that are relevant to this application.
I would like to share my screen. So, and also I believe the city will start give a little brief introduction to the project and the initiative.
Okay, and again, if we can get a brief qualifications that are
Oh,
relevant
I'm sorry.
in
I'm
the beginning, whoever's going to actually present as a consultant, if you could give a
Yes.
brief, just super brief. Again, we know most of you guys, but just for the public record.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. My name is Anna Johnson. I'm a coastal engineer with Bayland Consultants and Designers. Bayland has been working for 30 years in this area, and I've been part of Bayland for about 6 years. I've been a professional engineer for the last 11 years, specializing in coastal protection projects, marina infrastructure, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, can we, I guess you said the city's going to start this off. Who is going to?
Sure, and I'll just say a couple of words of introduction about the project, and particularly the design trade-offs. As with any
Mr.
project.
Vogel, hold on. Did you
Yep.
swear in?
I did not.
Okay.
You can swear him in right now.
Okay, if we can just do that very quickly. Can you share your screen for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, this will go quick. Can you please raise your
Know the
right
drill.
hand? You do solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in Port Wardens is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so thank you. Go ahead.
All right. So like I was saying, as with any project, there are trade-offs here. We have neighbors to both the east and the west. The marina to our east would love for the floating dock that we're proposing to be as far away from them and impact their slips as little as possible. I imagine the neighbor to the west feels the same way, or at least don't want our floating dock slammed all the way up to their ladder lines. And the other trade-off that we have is kind of in or out, and why that's important and why I wanted to speak to it is it really speaks to the question of accessibility and ADA access. The further out we push a floating dock, the better we are able to achieve the target of a 12-to-1 slope ratio. And that's what the ADA guidelines recommend. We're not under a federal mandate to achieve that under all conditions in this project, but it is still the city's objective to get as close as we can under tidal conditions. So you can look at that as the number of hours per day or percentage of the time. So we did have some suggestions from waterfront engineering about how we might achieve that. And give them a little bit more standoff distance from their slips. But that would come at a cost. The calculations we have is that about 55% of the time we'd be at a slope of 12-to-1 or less. I really think the objective should be closer to 90-95, and that's what we've got proposed here. But we could live with something in between. And so what I hope to accomplish tonight after the presentation and in the discussions that follow after we've heard from the other public testimony is to kind of come to some guidelines there of what we think an acceptable outcome, and then we can modify the designs to create the minimum navigation distance that we need and try to achieve as much accessibility as we can. So with that, I'll turn things over to Anna.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to walk through kind of the design process we went through and some of our reasoning for the way that the project is designed. And as Burr said, we're hoping this makes for a conversation to kind of reach a solution that everyone is happy with. So this is a project location at the end of 6th Street on Back Creek. Okay. Give me 1 second to advance the slide. There we go. Okay, so currently this is what the site looks like. It is an existing street end park in Annapolis, so it does provide public water access. It has a concrete wall here. The elevation of the concrete wall is approximately 5.5 feet above mean low water. And the access is provided by, two ladders kind of on either side, of the 40-foot long seawall, and then some cleats for tying up dinghies, to the wall. Water depths are about, like half a foot to a foot directly adjacent to the wall. So pretty shallow water depths. And, as you can see, basically most of the boats, tie up either to the ladder just to be as close as possible because of the distance that the ladders, they're only, ingress egress to and from their boats. And even at times of high tide, that's at least a 3-foot drop down to the water level. So the city kind of began looking at ways to improve the access. And this was a concept that was developed back in 2020. I believe that during that there was a meeting with Safe Harbor Marinas after the development of this concept to kind of talk about it and impacts that this concept would result in. So it just includes a floating dock shown here with a gangway that leads down to it, and then some dredging just due to the really, really shallow water depths in the area. So when Bayland came on board in about May of 2023, we were looking at options to actually improve the ADA accessibility. I think Burr mentioned, so there's generally speaking, marina infrastructure is exempt from ADA accessibilities because a lot of times it's very difficult to meet the requirements of ADA. However, it is a city initiative to try to make as many of their parks ADA accessible. So we looked at different options that we could kind of optimize the design of the concept to provide better ADA accessibility. So this bottom one shows what was proposed previously, and then the other ones show options to improve the ADA accessibility. And so ultimately, option one was decided. So this top one here. So then in August, we just kind of, this is a refinement of that option. And basically what it entails is a timber ramp that slopes down at a 12-to-1 to meet that ADA accessibility. And then another timber ramp that then leads out to this location, and then an aluminum gangway that leads down to the floating dock, where the dinghies can kind of tie up and then make their way up or down. So this was just and then it also included dredging, the dredging that was in the previous design, and included that as well. So we met with the community on November 1st. Safe Harbor Marinas had some representatives there, and then just other community members were there. One of the big takeaways from the meeting was there was questions on the property boundaries, where the property ended and where the neighboring properties began. And Safe Harbor was able to share a boundary survey that they had conducted with us. So we were pretty confident on that boundary line, but the other one was still in question. So in January of 2024, the city actually initiated their own boundary survey. Here it is shown, signed and sealed by a professional land surveyor. So just based on that, we developed these lateral lines that are, in compliance with the county code for the lateral lines. Sorry, the city code. Apologies. And then there was just some refinements that were made to the design. The dredging was removed, and that was mainly a Maryland Department of the Environment comment. Also, the pier was reduced in size, the floating pier from 10 feet to 8 feet. And we had been receiving public comments discussing clearance widths and things of that nature. But on July 17th, there was a public hearing that was initiated through the MDE process. So the project had to go on public notice for MDE's approval as well as from the Corps of Engineers approval. And so this public hearing resulted from that public notice process. where representatives from Safe Harbor Marina and other neighbors attended. So what came from that was some suggestions of, hey, we would like to see more clearance, and specifically from Safe Harbor, asking for more clearance in this kind of pinch point that's shown here, between the end of their pier and the floating dock. Waterfront Design provided us with an alternative concept that we looked at and we overlaid onto our design plans. And so the concept, though it did provide a little bit more clearance, we came up with like about 1.5 feet more clearance in this location, from 32 feet to like 33.5 feet of clearance. It did limit the accessibility, as Burr said, to approximately 60% of the time it would be accessible, ADA accessible, and 40% of the time it would not be ADA accessible. But we did do some refinement to kind of help appease Safe Harbor. This was increased. It was previously 29 feet. They wanted 35, I think. We were able to, we shifted everything over closer to this property setback line, in an effort to provide them with more clearance, to be able to access these slips here. Now, one of the comments that was received on this is that because this is meant for docking of dinghies, any dinghies that are docked in this side would then be violating the 5-foot setback. However, the code states that you can't have moored vessels, and the interpretation of moored means it's a semi-permanent state, whereas the dinghies that are going to be tying up here are going to be limited to a number of hours, not days, just a number of hours to go access the city, visit restaurants and shops and things, and then leave by the end of the day. So we believe that as long as we don't provide infrastructure in the setback line, we are not in violation of the city code. And this way, this provides almost as the needed clearance that Safe Harbor would like to see between the slips. So I think that is basically the conclusion of my presentation. This is just kind of an aerial overview of what we're proposing. And so I'm happy to take any questions and start the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll eventually get to questions. Let's go ahead with public testimony. I guess Mr. Hyatt possibly, or who is listed for public comment? Okay, Mr. Arnett. Alderman.
Yes, you want me to speak now?
Please, yes.
Yes. All right, so I'm Ross Arnett. I live at 529 6th Street, so I'm near to this location. I'm also the alderman representing Ward 8. I'll speak first as alderman. It is the well-established policy of the city council to maximize water access wherever we can. And in fact, we have in draft a equitable water access plan, which we hope to soon adopt. And so this is something that is very consistent with the city policy. As an individual, I miss dearly the floating dock that was removed there probably about a dozen years ago now. My wife and I had a 2-person kayak that we would walk down the street, drop into the water, because as you can see from the pictures, there's no ramp or anything, and then climb down the ladder to get into it. This obviously is a much better use of or availability of accessibility for all people, including me and my wife, to be able to get to the water. So I think this is a huge benefit to the city goals of accessibility, and will be a very nice thing to have at the Street Inn in my neighborhood.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more public testimony? I believe we might. Mr. Adams, are you aware of anyone else on for public testimony?
I'm sorry. No, I think Mr. Hyatt's the only other party.
Okay.
to
All right.
speak.
If we can, Mr. Hyatt, if you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm Alan Hyatt. I represent SHM Annapolis LLC, which is the owner of the Safe Harbor Annapolis Marina, immediately adjacent to the site. And I have a few questions for Ms. Johnson, if I may. Ms. Johnson, are you familiar with Title 15 of the City Code?
Yes, I believe so.
You've designed projects in the city before?
Yeah.
The site that has been selected by the city, you would agree, is pretty narrow, isn't it?
I have no ability to judge that.
You have no ability, you designed this and you don't have any ability to judge the whether the width of 6th Street is a narrow one for a project like this?
It's all relative. What do you mean by narrow?
Well,
I mean, let's talk about facts.
Mr. Vogel, let's keep this between sort of those asking questions and answering questions.
She answered the question. I'd appreciate if you help guide the conversation as well.
I agree, but Mr. Hyatt has a right to answer question. Mr. Hyatt, she did answer the question.
Okay, how wide is 6th Street at the water?
It's the seawall along that section is about 40 feet.
How many? I didn't hear.
40 feet.
40 feet. Okay, so you have 5-foot setbacks on each side. But, the lateral lines go straight out, right? In this particular case, and you have 5 feet on each side for setbacks, right? So you have a 30-foot wide project.
Correct. Yeah, with the setbacks, it's actually a little bit less, just because, as you can see, the property line, it extends a little bit past the seawall. So it's a little bit less space that we have to work with to build the infrastructure.
Okay. All right, so you're trying to accomplish the public access as a result of the gangway for individuals with disabilities. You need that, in other words, to offer that opportunity at this site, right?
Maximizing ADA access is absolutely a goal of the project.
Okay. Are you aware under Title 15 that you're obligated to consider the impact on adjacent properties?
Yes.
And how did you evaluate the impact on Safe Harbor? Given the location of that gangway, the slips that are adjacent to the land are almost impossible to use. Isn't that correct?
I'm not a boater, so I can't answer that question either. Sorry.
Okay. Did you consider whether your proposed structure would render navigation too close and confined? Or did you not consider that?
No, it's definitely a consideration. I think we've spoken to the efforts we've made to kind of stay as far away from the marine infrastructure as we can. And the slips closest to the seawall there are in relatively shallow water, so it stands to reason that the boats would be limited. So we evaluated those. If that was a bigger slip, then that would have definitely impacted what we could do at this site.
But you would agree that it will be extremely difficult to navigate to get in and out of those slips closest to the wall, right?
Once again, I'm not a boater, so anything, yeah, I can't speak to how easy or hard it would be.
Do you think navigation would be impeded in any way as a result of this project, of your proposal?
Impeded is a little bit different than being difficult, so I can't speak to that question either.
Okay, so you don't know.
Right.
If there was no gangway here, wouldn't that alleviate the concerns of Safe Harbor?
if there was no gangway, we could definitely, we could possibly move the structure closer, but, you know, the gangway wasn't the deciding factor on how long the floating dock would be.
So there's no parking at the end of 6th Street, is that correct?
Correct.
And how, with respect to persons that may have some disability, how do they arrive at the site? And
Let me hold on one second.
Okay.
So although I actually have questions like that, it's actually not the port warden's job or responsibility for anything related to land. So we can't, discussing where someone is going to park is not part of our responsibility or Title 15. So it's sort of moot. I understand the question, but it's not really relevant to the design and or how it impacts the usability of the water.
Okay, so Ms. Johnson, you could have a site here if it's approved that people can't access. Is that right?
No, I don't see the logic in that.
I'd really like to be a part of this conversation. The city is the
Well,
applicant.
you're not a witness.
And
Well,
so
let's let
Mr.
Mr. Hyatt finish, and then there
Okay.
isn't time for rebuttal to applicant. Okay,
that's fine.
Mr. Vogel, thank you.
All right. The MDE is also considering this application, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And the MDE has not approved it yet. Is that true?
They have submitted their last round of comments to us and accepted our responses and are in the process of drafting their document.
Right, but you do not have an approval at this time.
No, not at this time.
Okay. All right, thank you. That
Okay.
concludes my questions of this witness at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Mr. Vogel.
And if Mr. Hyatt would like answers to his questions, I'd be happy to provide them.
Well, there's a
Just trying to make
rebuttal
points,
time
then-
frame
then-
for the applicant or appellant, so.
I mean, do we want to talk about how people might be able to get here? Like they could walk, or they could roll in a wheelchair, or they could be dropped off in a car.
Right. I hear what you're saying. That is not in Title 15. We don't talk about the parking. We don't talk
Right.
about, like, that's not our role or responsibility. I agree with you that there are people who certainly can park somewhere else and take the wheelchair or whatever they
Sure.
use as an aid to reach it. But again, it's not part of our responsibility at this particular meeting. Do you have
And
any
I'll go
other-
ahead and address impacts to navigation. As I mentioned in my introduction, that's absolutely one of our considerations. And we have, and I talked about trade-offs, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that we understand that anything we build out here will impact navigation because we have a marina right next to us. And our objective here is to find the balance.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, do we have any other rebuttals or, to the applicant or the appellant, or is there any other comments in that respect before I move to my questions? Okay, so this is one issue that it's sort of an element within Title 15 that we sort of struggle with, related to grandfathered and or existing use versus current use. Mr. Hyatt, you can see the image on the screen, correct?
I can.
Okay. Do you see where the actual property line is?
I do.
Okay. Do you see how, at least you're familiar with Title 15, 18100?
I'm generally familiar with Title.
Okay, it's lateral line setback. Let me.
Oh yeah, you got a 5-foot setback.
Yeah, no portion of a structure, marina, yacht club, or working boatyard and community or pier mooring installed after February 11th, 1980. I only have images to 1989 that I can actually make out. So I'm sure Mr. Mears probably did this, and it was fine back then, but they're supposed to be within 5 feet away. That, of course, is enforced by the harbor master. So
Correct.
In this image, and in the last 5 images I see on Google Earth, there is a vessel protruding well beyond not only a 5 foot, because the dock is actually built to the property line, but is actually protruding over the actual property line. Do you see that?
I do see that.
Okay,
and-
all right, great. And the number of vessels at Mears Safe Harbor is quite a few, and often marinas have to decide where a boat fits based on depth and length and all the rest. So we're talking effectively about three, I would say 3 slips. Or do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think we're
Maybe
talking about 5 slips, and I want to be clear, we're not asking you to legalize something that encroaches beyond a setback. We understand that. I mean, we'll show you some aerials that show no encroachments. Our position is that boats within the slips, within the setback requirements that are properly docked, will have a very difficult time maneuvering. And I think that's pretty obvious, even from this picture. And we're
Right.
not asking for approval of anything that goes beyond the line. I understand your point.
Okay. And it looks like, at least on the latest image of 9/20/23, they actually did in fact put like 15 footers or 16 footers in these slips that are closest to the bulkhead.
I think that's true.
Okay. All right. And it looks like there's, I can't tell from the Google image, but is this a mooring? Can you clarify, Mrs. Johnson? It's the one sort of closest to where the turn for the ramp going down to the dock is, right around there. Is that an actual mooring piling?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay. All right. That is protruding. I can't see that because it's covered by, and I'm just asking questions. I'm trying to figure out, we try to sort of say yes where applicable, and but also work with, reducing congestion and reducing, making sure we're not taking away from too many entities, but also, giving, especially with Title 15, giving access to where it's sort of serving the community best. But that was really my primary question is can there, can by working those back slips in a particular way where there's not a big revenue jump or reduction, is it possible to find a set of vessels that would fit there but can also easily traverse out? That's one of the real big negatives, quite honestly, big picture, of losing setbacks. The setbacks, the 5 feet make 10 feet, which gives you a good alleyway, and we lose that alleyway. But inherently, this street end is a little tightened because years ago that setback obviously wasn't in place and or honored. Again, we'd have to look at images pre-1980. So I really, I mean, again,
sorry, can I just amend my answer to no, that is not actually a pile. I apologize. I was looking at the wrong one.
Okay, I'm looking at the one, if you move your mouse a little to the right there.
Okay, no, that is not a pile. So.
Okay, good. All right, that's probably why they've stuck with very small vessels back in those particular spots. And again, if I shared my screen, I could show you multiple years of multiple pictures from Google Earth, and they've always gone with smaller vessels back there. So in theory, do you know the distance from the piling to the corner of the dock where that larger vessel is protruding beyond the actual finger pier?
So this piling here,
roughly, yes, from there to the, actually no, the piling to the little closer to the start, exactly, that piling to the corner. So I'm just curious what the distance is. So, not that corner, no, the corner where the dock, there, that's what I'm looking for.
I do not actually know, but it's something I can easily look up and tell you in.
Okay, thank you. I just want to see, like, so the average small whaler is going to be 8.5 feet beam. That's what looks like has been sort of placed over there. And I just want to see if it's an impossibility. And Mr. Anderson, you probably have, when we get to you, you have more, you have a ton of experience with navigating these little vessels in and out. I as well do. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. That's why, if you get a sense of the footage, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so it's 18.5 feet.
Okay.
From the corner of the ramp to that island.
Okay. All right, great. All right. I don't have any more questions at this point. So can I ask any of the other fellow port wardens? I'm sure you guys have questions. Mr. Anderson?
Well, as far as navigation is concerned, tight navigation is a problem in all the city waters pretty much. If you look at Chart House, those places over there, some of the slips are at an angle and they're still difficult to get in. That's unfortunately a part of what we have to deal with every day. Now, is it prohibitive from doing that, from that structure there? That I don't know. It's tight, but so is everywhere.
Okay. What other questions? Do you have any other? Oh, let me finish with Mr. Anderson. You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Siegel or Port Warden Siegel.
Yeah, a couple of things. Do we have an exact measurement of the sidewalk? You kept saying approximately 40 feet. Do we have an exact measurement?
I can give it to you. 1 second. The exact measurement that I'm getting is about 37 and just over 37.5 feet of the seawall.
Okay, so you have about 37 feet. Now, the south lateral line looks like it is extended further south than the edge of the sidewalk.
Yes.
Who came up with that? I have a problem with that measurement, because
So
that is,
be
honest with you, that's longer than 37 feet.
So that is based on this boundary survey that was conducted.
Was that submitted in the packet? Just out of curiosity. Because I don't believe I saw that.
I don't believe so, no.
No, the boundary survey was not. The lateral line calculations were in there, but not the boundary survey.
Okay, thank you. I believe it. I'm just curious, like if it was. I was looking.
So you're saying that lateral line or boundary line is further south than the edge of the sidewalk.
Correct. So that if you can see my little hand, this is the edge of the sidewalk, and then the property line extends out to here. This is there's a chain link fence that goes along here, and the property line is actually on the other side of the chain link fence.
Okay, so the chain link fence was placed by the neighbor, as far as you know?
I'm not sure.
From the Dana, whatever name, Dana Radkokia.
I'm just not sure.
Has she or any of her representative had any comment on this?
Yes. I believe they provided written comments to Mr. Adams prior to this.
I don't have anything from them. Do we have anything that written from her?
I think I received something late this afternoon, which is sort of after our deadline, but I'd be happy to share it with you guys.
Well, it's after the deadline. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Additionally, then,
any good.
Do we have?
Howard, I think your video froze. Can you hear me? All right, I don't want to cut it short, and I'll interrupt the next person. Mr. Lerner, Mr. McCobb, do you have any questions?
My only question was the tying up of the dinghies. You're going to have signage there? Or you're going to not have cleats there? Or how are you going to prevent people from tying up there for long periods of time?
Yeah, how's it going to be enforced?
I'll let the city speak to that comment.
That would be a harbor master question.
That's fairly common for the harbor master to enforce people who are tying their dinghies up for longer than what's allowed. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, there are assigned stickers for if they have a year-round mooring, they're assigned stickers for
Okay.
it. The transients are actually enforced as far as the Anchorage transients.
Oh, I understand that, but couldn't an assigned sticker park there then for indefinitely?
They shouldn't. Well, we need that. There needs to be signage and or enforcement. It's not our job to enforce it, but I agree with you, Mr. Lerner, that yeah. So on the I'm calling it the left side based on the image I'm looking at, but you know the Up Creek side, it does have to have signage saying no dockage beyond 24 hours or whatever the rule is for the harbor master. Like I said, it's their responsibility for enforcement. And I think it's a good point to mention that side has to be, there shouldn't be anything, tied up beyond whatever is considered, semi-permanent use. I mean, it's moored is, it depends how the city defines it. To be honest with you, I don't know the exact hour definition. I know some cities use 72 hours, some use 24 hours, some use even less than that, but that's something we probably should talk to. I agree that it would be start to encroach on the setback area if it became a person who left it there all week long or 2 weeks in a row. What's the point?
I know that that's not allowed. I'll try to look it up in the city code while y'all are talking. I'll put
That would be
chat.
That would be great. And I do think there's enough space if they tied bow in, not side tied, or at least to fit a certain amount. I'm not quite sure in that direct area. I think there's something like, I don't know, I want to say 6 to 7 city moorings. I'd have to look at the mooring map, but it should be enough that it would work, because of course people feed it from other street ends or they use some of the marina facilities. So it's not like a Main Street kind of dock that's going to have 35 dinghies on it all the time. Maybe during boat show, that's about it. All right, Mr. McCopp, do you have any questions?
One question I had was with the Maryland Department of the Environment being delayed maybe Robert, you've seen this before, but I don't know if I've had an application where that hasn't been approved by Maryland yet.
That's a good point.
What, Mr. Anderson?
I said that was a good point.
Yeah, I believe Carrie could probably better. I believe we've had applications come through, and it's just merely depending on, because if Maryland Department of Energy disallows it, it's disallowed. It's not going to happen. So it's sort of, let's face it, the actual buildings and permits, yes, it even gets a sort of supposedly inspected as it goes through the process, to make sure it's done right. Mr. Adams can probably better speak to that.
So you guys are not required to have that approval prior to approving. It sort of happens often at the same time, but they do have to have that before a permit will be issued for construction.
Okay.
I lost you. I dropped out.
Yeah, no, we're going to come back to you. Mr. Siegel, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I dropped out a little bit. The dock on the south side of that dock, which is 5 feet away from the lateral line, there will be no dinghies allowed on that side, correct?
We discussed that when you dropped off. Yes, the city will come up with some signage and or a time frame so that it wouldn't be considered a permanent slip for any, or even beyond 24 or 36 or 72 or whatever they decide, or whatever the city code is. So yes.
Why would it be allowed at any point at any time? We don't allow any boat to be, and if any boat's going to be probably tied up there, they're going to absolutely encroach on the neighbor's property if anything's tied up on that side. So I don't know about any time frame, 24 hours or anything. There should not be.
There's usually temporary docking is looked at sort of akin to holding steady and casting in navigable waterway that in theory in the future might become a riparian use, a permanent use. So it's sort of it stretches a tiny bit over to right of navigation. And I think temporary use is reality. It's usually in most cities defined so that it's not abused, though, and as well as enforced.
Just a reminder, you guys, that the city code, as it relates to mooring, is an enforcement action taken by the harbor master and not a criteria for consideration for you guys as to whether or not something in the future may or may not happen in terms of dinghies being, tied up for a certain period of time. That's all under the harbor master's purview.
I understand that, but if you have a dock sitting there like that, the place where I and probably everyone else would want to tie up is on the south side of that pier, which would be encroaching clearly on the neighbor all the time. And that's where I have a little, I would suggest there wouldn't be no cleats on that side or nothing else that would, indicate that the possibility exists that you can tie up on that side, because that clearly infringes on the neighbor. And that's exactly where I would tie up. Everybody would tie up on that side.
Okay.
So I just want to reiterate that the moving as far away from safe harbor was the motivation for that. So as Burr mentioned, we're trying to come to a compromise, and so we could always move more northeast for sure. But I don't think that would be the preferred alternative by all.
I think it can be, we'll get to the discussion phase, but I think you've done an admirable job for the existing use related to navigation, for those that actually have docks there existing in real life right now. I think it's a good, and I think the concern of misuse can be, one, it's not necessarily our responsibility, but it can and be enforced by the harbor master. And trust me, people will complain, and they can get a call, and they can come out, and they can, if the signage is right, they can address the issue instantly. So, but again, that's like Carrie had mentioned, it's not, we can't predict the worst things that will always happen or could always happen. We just have to sort of hope, not hope, but the city, I'm sure, will come up with a protocol to help make sure that everything's within the correct, usage. Are there any other, Mr. Siegel, any other comments, or lost you?
It sounded like you were then, to be honest, taking safe harbor's problem stronger than the person on the other side. If docking is going to be on both sides, shouldn't that ramp be more in the center?
But we don't work with future tense. There is no docking on that side. The person has not chosen to put an application in and or chosen to leverage. This is what there's often attorneys love to say, you're using other people's riparian rights, or you potentially will. You're not using it. There's a right of navigation to all water. Without permanent usage. It's not our job to predict if someone in 50 years is ever going to put a dock out there. At this point, we have to take into account what exists and then make, am I incorrect here, Carrie? But we've got to call what is presented to us, not what could.
Right, you're entitled to rely on the facts and circumstances that are before you, not on potential things that could or may happen in the future.
Right. And speaking of could or in the future, I'm just curious, and this is probably not a question, this doesn't go in, but is the city's resiliency plan, which I know is more focused within the spa area, and then we'll expand from there. How does the height of this particular bulkhead and or the construction, is there, and again, it's future, I'm just curious, how does this fit with the city's, which I think is incredibly important, but the city's resilience plan as far as the height of this particular bulkhead?
And Anna, what is the vertical elevation of the bulkhead there?
5.2, 5.7.
It's approximately 5.4 feet above mean low water. So it's
5.4
pretty
mean
high.
low water. Okay, so 4.47 NAV. Yeah, we're in great shape.
Yeah,
That,
good,
that will
good. Yeah, no, and again, that
rarely
was
flood.
just,
That's what I thought. That this is not one of
Yeah.
our problematic flooding areas.
yeah, no, I was just curious about it. I think that's good for the city to have the resiliency already thought of. All right, any other questions?
Well, I still think you're trying to appease the neighbor on the north side and not take into consideration the neighbor on the south side
Okay,
by putting the dock all the way to the south and not in the center of
Okay.
the street. But that's my thinking.
all right, thank you, I understand. All right. After all questions are asked, Port Wardens, because we're gonna go ahead and close this if there are. Okay, I declare the public hearing on
Wait a
Port.
minute, Mr. Chairman, I have a presentation to make by Mr. Milky.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
That's all right. That's all
I
right.
did not realize, I guess, Mr. Milky?
Yeah, before
Yes,
I
sir.
call Mr. Milky, who I know you're familiar with, and I'm going to be pretty brief here. We just want to hit the highlights. I do want to mention that, you know, our client that objects to this is not a bad group. You know, we find what the city wants to do is admirable. They want to allow access to the water by the community and folks with disabilities, but sometimes you cannot insert at particular locations a desired project without impeding your neighbors. And we have that situation here. And that's the point I want to make. I agree with the port warden who mentioned that we have congestion in the city waters. I get that. I grew up in this city along the city waters, and I know that. But you know, the port wardens do have the responsibility to make certain, I mean, that's what the code says, that the placement of structures in city waters do not render navigation too close and confined. And the problem is the city wants to do a little bit too much here. You know, it's one thing to have water access, but then they want to, you know, build this gangway, and it just doesn't work at this location. So with that, I would call Mr. Milky as our witness. Scott Milky, you've sworn him in. And Mr. Chairman, do you want me to qualify Mr. Milky as an expert? He's done this a lot in front of you.
He can qualify himself and very quickly.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Milky,
Mr. Milky, give the
just a brief description of your
record, just give a little background of your experience. And we do have his resume. We can submit that into the record. If you
That's
want that.
a brief qualifications.
Okay, Mr. Milky, go ahead and state your name and address for the record and your occupation, and then give the port warden some background about your 30-some years of experience.
Yeah, my name is Scott Milky. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Maryland, coastal engineer. I'm the owner of Waterfront Engineering Design and Construction. My address, we actually have a Florida office, is 100 Quarry Avenue, St. Pete Beach in Florida. And I've had 32 years of experience in this field, presented probably over that time at least 250 different types of shoreline projects and marinas and private piers and bulkheads, whatever.
And you've done many projects in the city of Annapolis on behalf of applicants and have opposed some, but you're quite familiar with the city's processes, are you not?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that
yeah,
Milky be accepted as an expert witness in the field of waterfront improvement design.
Well accepted. Mr. Milky, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Milky, you're familiar with the city's proposed plan as presented. I mean, we've spent a lot of time looking at this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you've seen various iterations of the plan, right?
I have.
And you've made some recommendations and some suggestions to the applicant about revising the plan. Isn't that right?
I have.
Okay. What I'd like you to do is take a few minutes and explain to the port wardens whether the application before them tonight and the plan that the city has submitted impacts the adjacent property. And I want you to focus on the Safe Harbor Annapolis Marina. That's who you're working for tonight. And but Safe Harbor, of course, is to the east of the proposed project. So take a few minutes and explain the impact. And I know we have a couple of exhibits that, you know, if Chris can share his screen, he can pull those up as well. Chris Snyder's also with us, Mr. Chairman, who he was at the last hearing, and I'll ask you to allow him to share his screen for some.
Sure, and he does not have to re-qualify. He already stated.
Right. Well, he's just going to share these exhibits. So,
okay.
So I'd like, let's start with this. You know, I would offer this into the record. I don't know if you label exhibits, but we'll call this our the Protestants Exhibit 1, and this is a variation on what you've seen already. But explain what this exhibit depicts, Mr. Milkey, and how this proposed project might impact the slips belonging to Safe Harbor.
Well, slips labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to be pretty heavily impacted by just being able to get in and out of their slips. Obviously, you can see. I wanted to go back to Anna's aerial. You don't have to show it, but it did show 2 large vessels extending across the property line, which this one does as well. Those vessels have been moved, and I just wanted to say what is actually in slip 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I got this from the owner of Safe Harbor. There's a 16-foot boat in slip 1, a 17-foot boat in slip 2, a 19-foot boat in slip 3, 40-foot boat with a 12-foot 3-inch beam in slip 4, and a 40-foot boat with a 12-foot beam, or 12-foot beam in slip 5. So that's currently what is there, which does not extend across the property. No, that's a 50 and a 53-foot boat that's depicted in that picture that Anna had up earlier. So that's a much longer boat, 13-foot longer than is there now.
Okay.
So anyway, that being said, Chris, could you possibly, well, you could see I hatched Chris hatched the area that is going to be negatively impacted. Just, you know, based on what I've noticed over the years, and I know how these floating end street bulkheads get used, and the way people tie their dinghies up, and we have an aerial that kind of drives my point home. Chris, can you go to that one?
I'm pulling it up as we speak. Appreciate your patience. This image is from October 12th, 2023.
Okay. So you can.
So Mr. Milkey, we'll label this a Protestants Exhibit 2. Explain to the port wardens what they're looking at here.
Well, this is the existing bulkhead, and you can see the dinghies and the way they tied up. I don't know what was going on. It's probably
October 12th. It's probably boat show. Let me look it up.
Yeah,
that's at the end of 6th Street, right? Correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
So, you know, looking at that picture, it's obvious that we're going to have a floating pier out there. You know, they tie up next to each other because they can't all fit. So, you know, they step across. That's what they do. You can see that downtown. It's City Dock. People do it all the time.
Do you have an image from any other time frame? Because that is exactly the middle of sailboat show.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the Google Earth over the time, but there's, you know,
No, I'm looking at it over time, and I'm only seeing 2 or 3 over multi years. Can you want to look at mine with me, or? I'm just making sure we're realistic.
No. I understand what you're saying. Well, we actually have ability to get on Near Map. We pay for that a lot,
cool.
And it's updated pretty much every 3 months throughout the year, so we can provide some pictures at various times throughout the year
that would be great.
I think would be a better, because Google, you know, it's unclear for one thing, and two, it was every couple of 3 years they update their aerials.
Right.
So, you know.
Okay.
So is it fair to say we're not trying to exaggerate, right,
Yeah.
Mr. Milkey? I mean, it's fair to say that there will be dinghies tied up, a few, some on boat shows, many, but generally in the summer on weekends you're going to have a few dinghies tied up, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and how does that impact the navigation and ingress and egress to those 5 slips?
Chris, can you put that other one back up again? Well, I think we can all picture in our head, but you can obviously see where you could see when it was up there that, trying to back in them slips and get through there is going to be tight. And Mr. Anderson explained the same point. He didn't testify that would be impossible, but it's definitely going to make it more difficult. And if I was renting that slip at that marina, I wouldn't be real happy about having to wiggle my way through there. And that's with nobody in the way.
Right, so is it fair to say that this proposed project will create additional congestion in Back Creek?
Absolutely.
And would you consider the location of the city's project too close to Safe Harbor?
Yes.
And would you consider it confining to the use of Safe Harbor's boat slips?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
Well, would you consider the city
yes.
project confining to the use of Safe Harbor's boat slips? You would, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything wrong with respect to lateral lines, right? The city, just like any other property, has lateral lines. They go straight out and they have a fairway they can work within, but they are significantly impacting Safe Harbor with this project, right?
Yes.
Is there a way to allow access to Back Creek from 6th Street without creating navigational problems for Safe Harbor, do you think?
I mean, it's going to definitely impact no matter what you do there. It's definitely going to have an impact on, even if you just took a floating pier and tied it right to the bulkhead, parallel with the bulkhead, it's still going to have an impact on slips 1 and 2 for sure, and 3 minimum.
But if you didn't have that gangway, it would be a big difference, wouldn't it?
Yes, the gangway definitely is not helping the situation.
Okay. All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about this, or did that cover it, do you think?
I think
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I guess I'm glad we didn't close this because I have some questions. How many slips are at Safe Harbor? I assume between the 3 of you engineers, you know the property really well. From a Google Earth view, I'm counting and it's hard and you have some, but how many? Do you know, Mr. Milky?
Chris, do you have that number?
I do not know off the top of my
head. Okay, Mr. Hyatt?
I do not know.
Okay, it looks like 220, give or take. All right, of all different sizes, squeezed in all different locations. There's also, of course, unusable corners where they have it. And I'm just, I know that all the various marinas and yacht clubs have to sort of modify and adjust to try to accommodate. I want to make sure we have some realism where we're trying to, again, say yes to all involved. We want to have the success of Safe Harbor, and we want to also have the success of the city and have access for the public. So I just want that sort of to be thought of in the equation. Everyone often has to modify and adjust. Mr. Milky, have you ever driven a boat back to that back corner?
I have not personally, no.
Okay, Mr. Snyder.
I have not.
Okay, can you tell the size of those vessels? Eyeballing it, I'm guessing 15, 16, 17, could be an 18 whaler.
It's 16, 17, 19, 40, and 40.
Okay, but the 40 is already protruding well into across
the picture that was shown is a 53-foot boat and 50-foot boat, the 2 bigger boats. Those are no longer there. The ones that are there now and paying for those slips are 40-foot long, both of them.
Okay,
that's
and you have a picture of that?
Chris, do we have a picture of that? I just have the owner of the marina telling me what's actually parked there now.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a year ago, so
that's
they're
the
not there.
picture that we have.
Is that a date? Okay. All right.
That's from last.
This is June 15th, 2024.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Okay. So you're just protruding beyond the actual lateral line by swim platform, maybe bell pulpit length.
I wish I had mirrors on the line here, but I don't know if those are the same boats that are there now, but let's just assume they are.
I'm just curious. I mean, I just want to, people talk about encroaching or being encroached upon, and I just want to make sure we're sort of looking at the same lines.
Right.
Okay. Again, we haven't closed it yet. So with the new sort of, and I'm sorry, we moved past the public. I did not realize I was only looking at Mr. Hyatt's face as a secondary. Is there anyone else I've missed as far as presenting this evening?
Mr. Chairman, before you close, I just would like 1 minute to give a brief closing
Sure.
argument. So when you're ready, you just let me know.
You can certainly go, but I'm still going to have the port wardens able to ask questions
Okay,
since those
sure.
other people came back in.
I think it's clear that this proposed project would materially interfere with safe harbor. And I understand the idea of trying to make everybody happy and approve everything, but sometimes you can't. I think in this situation, that gangway is fatal to the application. It may be okay to have a floating pier with a few dinghies, but to try and accommodate, and I know it sounds terrible, I'm not trying to harm people who have disabilities, but at this location, it's a problem. I think there has to be another location that the city needs to find to accommodate a gangway that's shown here, because the port wardens do have to decide whether the navigation is too close and confined as described in the code, and do have to evaluate whether impact of this project creates navigational hazards and what the effect of this is on riparian property owners. I get it. I mean, I understand it's a tough decision to make, but Mears, or now Safe Harbor, has been there a long, long time. And as I said, when I was a kid, it was there. Our rules and our code gives the benefit to the folks that have had legal slips in being for many years. So when you come in late, you can't interfere with what is legal and what's there. And I think that the appropriate decision by the port wardens is that this project that the city proposes has to be reduced. It has to be cut back. That gangway just has to go. And I don't know whether that means sending it back to the drawing board or approving it subject to elimination of that. But to approve it the way it is now, you're effectively telling Safe Harbor that you have 5 slips that you're not going to be able to use. And that's really what's before you. And so I would respectfully ask you to reject this application, or at least amend it if you're going to approve it in an amended fashion that eliminates that gangway. So thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. To port wardens, again, because we had brought those newer people in, do you have any additional questions? Mr. McCott.
No additional questions.
Okay, Mr. Lerner. Mr. Scott. Are we here? Mr. Anderson, sorry, Scott and Mr. Anderson. Sorry, Mr. Scott.
I have no additional questions.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Mr. Siegel.
No, it's no.
Okay, all right. At this point, I declare the public hearing for Port 2024-00013 129 Bayshore Avenue closed. Now it's a discussion. Obviously, guys, port wardens, we're working with the criteria, the typical title elements that we deal with. And again, this is a ongoing element where we try to balance grandfathering and prior use with future use for others, mixed with a little bit of where things are not enforced or should be enforced, or what is to code. We're gonna, I think, if we go through, we start with 15, 16, 20, which is normally where we do, is does it render navigation too close? I guess, what's your guys' general feeling?
Yeah. I, I think we're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It's a lot of wood here for 37 foot wide item, and not just for on the mirror side, but on the south side as well. If theoretically you can't, not allowed to put dinghies on that side. It's just a lot of wood here for that narrow space. It appears to me they're trying to squeeze too much in.
All right,
That's my gut feeling on it.
I know my answer, but Mr. Lerner, Mr. McCobb, and Mr. Anderson, do you feel like you could navigate a vessel into a 16, 17, 18 footer into those smaller slips more closer to the bulkhead?
Yeah,
I do, but then again, I'm a professional captain.
I do as well, and I happen to be a captain, but but that's all right. I do think it's an exaggeration to say 5 slips are affected. There's no question. If you look at the end of the pier, it's not even in alignment with the longest of mooring. I'm sorry, of the you call it a finger pier, but it's really almost not a finger. It extends fully out to their actual property line, not even their setback. So I think there's only the 3 slips that would be a discussion related to navigability. So for 15, 16, 20, I would say no, it does not render navigation too close. All right, placement of erection or construction or undertaking a manner of materials. I think the materials are substantial and lasting. That's a non-issue. All right, 15, 16, 20, whether proposed structure barrier will not increase material water pollution, material impair marine life. I believe we're totally fine with that. We're getting into one of those that was brought into play related to public access. So 15, 16, 20 also has whether the proposal structure barrier impedes navigable access by the public to the harbor line for a point of public property or easement area established for the benefit of public that includes shoreline, notwithstanding developable waterways. And this obviously is right within that, objective of public access. Thoughts on that, anyone? Or the port wardens? Sorry.
I mean, the public access part, I think, is a pretty important part of this. The city has riparian rights. This is in their developable waterway. We do have to consider the impact on safe harbor. We have to consider the effect. The effect might not be positive, but we still have to consider it. But we also have to consider the effect on the public. And, it's pretty precarious, climbing up and down that ladder. I think the city could do better. And I think the plans seem to make sense to improve that access.
All right. I'm going to push past 15, 16, 30. I'm sorry, Harold and Mr. Anderson, what are your thoughts on that, the public access?
Well, yes, of course, the whole idea behind the city doing this is to give public access. But as was mentioned earlier, we have to consider those, be it good or bad. We still have to take those into consideration and understand that we can't do anything about future events.
Okay. Mr. Siegel, any comment on that?
No, I agree. I'm a little concerned just with on the other side of where could there signage be that no docking allowed on this side of the dock on the south side. No cleats, no docking on that side.
Okay.
I'd want to add that. I'd want to add that as a condition.
Okay. All right. And 5. So for 15, 16, 30, effect of proposed structure alone in concert with present and other proposed uses for marine life, wildlife, conservation, water pollution, erosion, navigable hazards. Again, I think the navigation, I don't think is an issue for the size boat that fits in those respective slips. I do agree with you, Mr. Siegel, about enforcement. to make sure we're not clogging the area dramatically, or they're not clogging, sorry. All right, and then of course, the other part of 151630C is the effect of proposal on congestion within the waters. It's, again, I don't see that with the way they've designed it and pushing it all the way over, but for the width, and I think you got to be able to accommodate for the ADA, you have to have the width that can accommodate, am I correct? Well, I can't ask questions, but I believe I heard from testimony that they had originally just requested 35 feet, and they actually got 32 feet. So I believe that it's pretty close to what they were requesting as when they first initially met. Okay, let's do 7. The effect on proposed use of riparian property owners and access by the public for recreational purposes. That's 151630C as well. I think this is obviously it's definitely fits within that. It's meant almost entirely for public access. Any other thoughts? Okay. The element, it's not needed for commercial or industrial. We don't have to worry about that. Compliance 151618. The harbor line, obviously, it's compliant. Determination to develop a waterway and lateral lines are acceptable. Actually, again, they're sticking within their 5-foot setback. So 1516.060 is definitely okay. Compliance with harbor line, again, we've already said that, and the lateral line, which is the 1518-100. So they're definitely within their developable waterway. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve or deny the application in Port 14-2024-00013. It's 129 Bayshore Avenue.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, thank you.
Chair, you used the incorrect address.
I'm sorry.
6th Street.
I apologize.
Well, not that I mean, just to do that.
When I shifted around, I'm sorry. It's 6th Street. Sorry, it's Port 2024, and it's 6th Street Park. Thank you very much for catching that. I had left that. And it's Port 2024-002. Let me redo this so we do the motion in its entirety. So it's Port 2024-0019, and it's City of Annapolis, and it's 6th Street Park. Okay. So again, we've had the discussion and the criteria. So let's move to entertain a motion to approve or deny Port 2024-00019, and it's and it's 6th Street Park. All right. So, can I get a motion again?
I'll take a motion to approve.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And let me read this correctly. So
can I make a point? Can I ask a point though that we add? Is there a way that I can add that to be sure that signage is on that south side, that no docking allowed on that south side? Is that something that I can add to the motion?
Carrie, requesting an add-on from the city related to signage.
I think that was part of the presentation.
So it's in the code, the requirements of mooring, and it's an enforcement action. So you guys don't need to do that because it's outside your purview. Okay. And so it's sort of as an inherent condition that a vessel will not be moored within the 5-foot lateral line setback. And if there are issues with that, then it becomes an enforcement issue. So it is not something that needs to be stated, or it really falls within your guys's jurisdiction to state that.
Okay, that's what thank you.
But it does if they put cleats on that side, and inherently they are allowing it. If they put cleats on that south side, then inherently they are allowing a violation to occur.
Well, okay. So it
Sorry.
goes to the definition. No, but it goes to the definition of mooring in the code. So you guys have two options here. You can look at the definition of mooring and decide whether or not the cleats apply to what falls into that definition. And you can make your approval conditional upon that, or you can sort of, well, that's all I'll say. So if there's concern about the cleats and the port wardens as a whole wants to make it conditional on that, you have more leeway, you have more jurisdiction as it relates to that. But then the question becomes whether or not the definition of mooring in the code, which is what is prohibited, is that word mooring, whether that comes into play with the cleats. And I think I can't guide you one way or the other. You guys as a whole have to make that determination.
As the chair, I would, and again, I'm not mandating, I would say this is not I trust the city's combo of Parks and Rec and buildings and the harbor master to sort of do what's already written in code. I mean, if they had a slight railing that was a preventer for a wheelchair from going over, people would tie off to that anyway. Anyone who's going to do something sneaky or tricky is going to find a way to sort of do that, and it's up to enforcement. I don't know if we have to build the condition into this. That's my opinion. Again, we can, you know, we can add that to the motion, but we would have to have an agreement. But we do have a standing motion that we need a second on, and if we don't get a second, we can, you know, it will be a vote, and then we can see where the vote goes, and then if we need to add something after the fact, you know, then it would take another motion after one got declined.
You know, I'd like to make the motion that
Hold on. You guys have already made a motion to approve. You've seconded that motion. So you have to vote on that motion. And if there's a request to amend whatever the motion is to add conditions, you, for purposes of making the record clear, can vote down the approval and then either reconsider or make a motion to approve it with conditions.
Okay. I agree. So who was the second?
That was me.
I do apologize. After I thought it was you, Mr. Rakop. I just want to make that clear. And Mr. Siegel, that did come prior to the question if we can add. So at this point, we do have to vote yay or nay. All right. So all those in favor of the motion to approve the application for Port 2024-00019 6th Street Park, say all those state yay or aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I don't see you, Mr. Anderson, so I didn't see what you voted. That was aye. Okay, so at this point, that was unanimous, and the application is accepted.
I'd like to make a motion to make an amendment.
Okay, what is that?
That is with the Mr. Siegel's stipulation of signage.
Okay, can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Siegel. All right. So there's a motion on the floor to amend what we just voted on for Port 2024-0019 6th Street Park to add, what is the language you want to add, Mr. Siegel?
Oh, golly. That cleats or other mooring accoutrements will not be on that south side of the dock.
Okay.
Somehow, I'm not exactly sure how to express it. So that
that's the right thing to say. I mean, it's maybe not the best words, but it's what you want to do, right?
Correct. In other words, I'm just sort of protecting the interests of the property owner to the other side, which we haven't discussed really at all, you know, and make sure that the docks, that the boats are docked on the north side and not on the south side of that, because that's exactly where they're going to try to dock. I'm telling you right now.
So, Mr. Shapiro, so word it to the effect of no cleats or mooring attachments can be on that south side, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, simple.
All right. So let's go ahead and I'll entertain a motion. Obviously, I can't make the motion. So
I'll make a
go ahead,
motion
Mr.
to
Anderson,
approve.
can you state it clearly for the record, and then we'll get a second if we no.
We will amend this with the words of no cleats shall be installed on the south side of the pier.
Okay. Mr. C, or can I get a second?
Second.
All right. Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the motion related to the amendment for the no cleats on the south side of the dock for Port 2024-00019, 6th Street Park. All those in favor of the additional amendment, please state aye or yes.
Aye.
Okay, all those, any opposed, please state no.
No.
No, and no. Okay, so that's 3. So in that case, the amendment is not necessary, and the actual motion for Port 2024-0019 is approved. The application is approved with no amendments. Thank you guys very much. I thought this was well thought out. Thank all the people who participated in this. Let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Again, appreciate it. I thought this was very thoughtful and conscientious. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right. So our next regular meeting, let me find my agenda, is next month. And it is on the next monthly meeting will be November 26th.
26th.
Yes. So the day before thanks, is it? 2024. We will see. All right. There being no more items on the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you, Mr. Siegel. Mr. Kopp, I got a second. All right, all those in favor of motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you guys very much. Hearing no opposition, the meeting is adjourned.